In a small third-floor apartment of an aging building in Brooklyn, Aisha Thompson's alarm blared at 5:30 a.m., tearing through the stillness of the night. The shrill sound yanked her out of a restless sleep, where dreams of an easier life quickly dissolved. Aisha, 32, was a single Black American mother, her deep brown eyes filled with resilience and the invisible scars of a life marked by hardship. She reached over to silence the alarm, allowing herself 10 seconds beneath the thin blanket to breathe deeply and brace for the long day ahead. Aisha's apartment was warm but cramped, with beige-painted walls that had faded over time and bore small cracks she hadn't had the time to fix. The kitchen, where she now stood brewing coffee, barely fit an old wooden table and 2 chairs. One wobbled slightly. On the table sat a stack of unpaid bills, electricity, water, and a student loan that she no longer hoped ever to repay. Even so, this apartment was her home, her haven for herself and Noah, her 6-year-old son, the light in her darkest days. Aisha dressed in her neatly pressed white blouse and black pencil skirt, the outfit she called her battle uniform. As the executive assistant to Ethan Harper, CEO of Harper Innovations, a leading tech firm in Manhattan, she couldn't afford to look sloppy. Ethan, a 40-year-old white American man, was known for his sharp leadership style and nearly impossible demands. He embodied the success Aisha had once dreamed of in high school, though that dream was replaced by the harsh reality of raising Noah alone. She tiptoed into Noah's room, where the boy lay asleep under a dinosaur-patterned blanket, his curly hair puffed out against the pillow, and his small lips pressed together in a dreamy pout. Aisha smiled, heart warmed by the sight of her son, but also heavy with responsibility. "Noah, sweetheart, time to get up," she whispered, gently nudging his shoulder. Noah stirred, opening his big round eyes to look at her. He mumbled, "5 more minutes, Mommy," pulling the blanket over his head. "No can do, baby." "Mrs. Harris is waiting," Aisha replied, her voice soft but firm. Mrs. Harris, the elderly neighbor in the apartment next door, was Aisha's godsend. She watched Noah before and after school, allowing Aisha to work the long hours required at Harper Innovations. Without her, Aisha didn't know how she'd manage, especially on a salary that, while decent, still wasn't enough to afford professional childcare. While Noah slowly dressed, Aisha prepared breakfast, toast with peanut butter and sliced apple. She checked her handbag, ensuring she had all the documents needed for Ethan's morning meeting. Her phone lit up with an email from Ethan, sent at 3 a.m. "Aisha, I need the Marshall media files before 8. Please don't make me wait." She sighed, the familiar pressure bubbling up. Working for Ethan felt like running a marathon with no finish line. But she needed this job, not just for the money, but to prove her worth in a world that constantly doubted women like her. As a child, Aisha had dreamed of becoming a journalist, writing stories that could change the world. She grew up in a poor Brooklyn neighborhood where her mother, a nurse, worked herself to exhaustion raising Aisha and her younger brother. Her father left when she was little, leaving behind a void she'd taught herself to ignore. When her mother died of cancer at 17, Aisha became independent, working part-time at a grocery store to put herself through college. But the journalist's dream was shattered when she got pregnant with Noah at 26. Noah's father, a man she had once loved, disappeared the moment he found out, leaving Aisha to face judgmental stares and financial burdens alone. At 6:45 a.m., she and Noah left their apartment, stepping down the creaky stairs of the building. The New York air was bitterly cold, and Aisha held Noah's hand tightly as they crossed the noisy street to Mrs. Harris's. "Be good, baby," she said. "I'll pick you up after work," bending down to kiss his forehead. "Love you, Mommy," Noah replied, hugging her tightly before running into the warm-smelling apartment, where the scent of freshly baked cookies lingered. On the crowded subway ride to Manhattan, Aisha stood wedged among strangers, earbuds in to block out the noise. She ran through her mental checklist, prep the report, confirm the meeting schedule, make sure Ethan's coffee, black, 1 sugar, was exactly right. But her thoughts were interrupted by a brief memory. A time at work when a white co-worker had casually implied she only kept her job thanks to the diversity policy. Aisha had smiled and brushed it off, but the sting remained. A reminder that no matter how hard she worked, she'd always have to prove twice as much. Aisha's phone buzzed as the train stopped near the Harper Innovations building. She opened the message, hoping it was a good morning text from her best friend, but it was from Mrs. Harris. Aisha, I'm so sorry, dear. I've come down with a bad fever this morning. I can't watch Noah. I'm genuinely sorry. Aisha's heart clenched. She replied, asking after Mrs. Harris's health, but her mind was already panicking. Noah's school was closed for the holiday break, and she had no family in New York. Her friends were all at work. She called her backup babysitter, but there was no answer. Standing before the gleaming glass tower of Harper Innovations, Aisha felt her world collapse. She couldn't take the day off. Ethan had zero tolerance for tardiness, and she needed her paycheck to cover next month's rent. Only one option remained: bring Noah to the office. She texted Mrs. Harris to ask if she could swing by and pick up Noah's toy backpack. Mrs. Harris's nephew replied, saying he'd leave the door unlocked for her. Aisha took a deep breath, clenched her fists, and stepped into the building, knowing this decision could change or ruin everything. The subway swayed on its tracks, the metal screech blending with the packed passengers' murmurs. Aisha stood tucked in a corner, gripping the pole tightly, her eyes fixed on her phone screen. A message from Mrs. Harris's nephew had just arrived. The door's open. You can grab Noah's backpack. My aunt's okay, needs rest. Aisha exhaled in relief, but her chest remained heavy. Noah, seated next to her, clutched his green plastic dinosaur, his big round eyes staring out the black tunnel window. Mommy, do I get to go to work with you today? He asked, his voice innocent, tinged with excitement. Aisha smiled tightly, ruffling his hair. Just today, sweetheart. I need you to be good, okay? Mommy's office is a workplace, not a playground. Noah nodded, but curiosity lit his eyes. He had never been to her workplace, and he had only heard vague stories about the big boss and those nights when Mommy came home late, exhausted but still holding him tightly. When the train stopped at a small station in Brooklyn, Aisha led Noah across the noisy street back to the apartment complex. She opened the door to Mrs. Harris's unit, where the faint scent of medicine and ginger tea lingered. Noah's backpack sat on the couch, filled with coloring books, pencils, and an old pair of headphones Aisha had repaired. She added a box of cookies and a water bottle, trying to mask the rising anxiety inside her. She knew she was walking into dangerous territory. Ethan Harper, her boss at Harper Innovations, was not known for leniency. Once, she'd heard him yell at an employee for spilling coffee on a document, a tiny stain. What would happen if he saw Noah, a 6-year-old child, in his polished office? Every passing minute felt like a hammer striking her nerves back on the subway. She ran through her to-do list again. The Marshall Media report due by 8 a.m., a partner meeting at 10, and yet another email from Ethan, short and sharp, as always. Aisha, recheck the Q3 figures, no errors tolerated. She bit her lip, suppressing a wave of panic. Working for Ethan was like walking a tightrope. Every step had to be perfect. And today, she was carrying a weight. Noah. Mommy, where's my dad? Noah asked suddenly, his voice small but clear amid the train's clamor. The question pierced Aisha like a blade. She had heard it many times, but it hurt just as much each time. Noah's father, the man she once thought would build a future with her, had disappeared the moment she told him about the pregnancy. No explanation, no phone call. She looked into Noah's eyes and saw the yearning for an answer she couldn't give. "Your daddy. He's very far away, sweetheart," she said, her voice trembling. "But I'm here, and I love you more than anything." Noah nodded, but his eyes wandered, as if searching for a shadow that wasn't there. She remembered those long nights after Noah was born, crying while rocking him to sleep, wondering how she'd survive as a single mom in an expensive city like New York. She had once been denied a job for lack of experience, though she knew the real reason lay in the cautious look the recruiter gave her. A black woman with curly hair and a confident voice. Harper Innovations was her most significant break, where she had to prove herself twice as challenging to be respected. But now, she was risking it all simply because she had no one to watch Noah. When the train reached the Manhattan station, Aisha gripped Noah's hand as they stepped out, the crowd sweeping them into the city's relentless rhythm. The Harper Innovations building loomed ahead, towering glass and steel, symbolizing power and ambition. She took a deep breath, straightened her skirt, and whispered to Noah, "Remember, be very quiet, Harry. Mommy needs to work, and my boss is very strict." Noah nodded, clutching his backpack, but his mischievous smile made Aisha nervous. Her boy always had a way of turning the day into a surprise. In the elevator to the 30th floor, Aisha felt the eyes of those around them. Tailored suits, shiny leather briefcases. She and Noah stood out, not just because of the child, but because of her presence, someone who didn't quite fit in this world. A middle-aged man glanced at Noah, then gave Aisha a stiff smile. "Cute kid. Visiting mommy at the office?" Aisha nodded, keeping her tone calm. "Yes, just for today." But she knew what lay beneath that smile. A bit of curiosity, a hint of judgment. She was used to looking like that, but today they stung more than usual. The elevator doors opened, revealing the sleek space of Harper Innovations, marble floors, soft lighting from chandeliers, and the soft tapping of keyboards from every desk. Aisha guided Noah to her workstation, a small corner outside Ethan's glass-walled office. She quickly set up a spot for him, a chair, coloring books, headphones, and cookies. "Sit here. Don't go anywhere, okay?" she said firmly. Noah nodded, already flipping open a book, his eyes darting around the office, curious about this strange new world. Aisha sat at her desk and opened her laptop, trying to focus on the Marshall media report. But every sound, the phone ringing, co-workers' footsteps, made her flinch, terrified someone would complain about Noah. She glanced at him. He was coloring a dinosaur with sweet concentration. But then, her phone lit up with a new email from Ethan. "Aisha, I'll be in early. Where's the file? Meet me in 10. Her heart stopped. Ethan was arriving earlier than expected, and the report wasn't ready. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, sweat forming on her brow, trying not to look at the clock. "I'm thirsty," Noah whispered, tugging her sleeve. Aisha paused and grabbed the water bottle from his backpack. "Drink up and keep coloring, okay? Mommy's busy." Noah nodded, but his eyes drifted to the large glass windows of Ethan's office, where sunlight streamed through, casting shimmering rays. Aisha knew he couldn't stay still forever. She silently prayed Ethan would get stuck in traffic, anything to buy more time. But then, the elevator chimed. Her heart sank. Tall and imposing in a deep blue suit, Ethan Harper stepped out, his sharp eyes scanning the office. Aisha knew. The defining moment was about to begin. The atmosphere at Harper Innovations seemed to freeze the moment the elevator dinged, signaling the arrival of Ethan Harper. Sitting at her desk, just outside his corner office, Aisha Thompson felt her heart pounding. She typed frantically, trying to finish the Marshall media report Ethan requested, but her eyes drifted toward Noah, who was coloring calmly in the chair beside her, with a green crayon in hand. Noah seemed oblivious to his mother's tension. He hummed a faint tune, his small legs swinging under the chair, fully immersed in his dinosaur world. Ethan stepped out of the elevator, tall and sharp in a perfectly tailored navy suit. His piercing gaze swept across the office, prompting employees to sit up straighter, the clatter of keyboards suddenly more urgent. Aisha rose to her feet, holding out a cup of black coffee, 1 spoon of sugar, just as Ethan liked it, and the hastily printed report. "Good morning, Mr. Harper," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, though her nerves were in knots. "Here's your coffee and the preliminary report for the Marshall media meeting." Ethan nodded, barely glancing at her, taking the coffee and report in stride. But then, his eyes landed on the corner of her desk, where Noah was seated. The little boy, with messy curls and wide, curious eyes, looked up from his coloring book. Time seemed to slow, as Noah broke into a radiant smile, so pure and open it made the entire office take notice. "Daddy!" he cried, his clear voice ringing out in the stunned silence. Before Aisha could react, Noah hopped down and ran straight to Ethan, wrapping his arms around the man's leg and gazing joyfully at him. The office froze. Someone dropped a pen, the slight clatter echoing in the hush. Laura, Aisha's co-worker, gasped and covered her mouth in shock. Aisha felt the blood drain from her face. Her mind spun. "Noah!" she shouted, her voice cracking with panic. She lurched forward to pull him away, but felt rooted to the ground. Ethan Harper, the man both respected and feared throughout the company, would never forgive this. She imagined being fired, forced to leave New York, and returning to a life of struggle and dead ends. But what happened next stunned her. Ethan didn't push Noah away. He didn't raise his voice. He set the coffee and report down on Aisha's desk, then knelt on one knee to meet Noah's gaze. "Why did you call me Daddy?" he asked, his tone so gentle it seemed to come from a different man than the one the office knew. Noah, entirely unaware of the tension around him, shrugged, his smile still bright. "Because you look like the daddy in my dreams," he said, as if that were the most obvious thing in the world. Aisha's throat tightened. She stepped forward, hand trembling as it touched Noah's shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Harper," she whispered. I don't know why he did that. My babysitter is sick, and I had no other options. I promise this won't happen again." She lowered her head, bracing for Ethan's wrath, but he looked at her, his expression unreadable. "This is your son?" he asked, his voice low but devoid of anger. "Yes, sir," Aisha replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "His name is Noah." Ethan nodded, his gaze shifting from Aisha to Noah and back. There was something in the way he looked at them, curiosity perhaps, or something deeper he didn't let surface. "Come into my office, Ms. Thompson," he said, rising and picking up the report. "Bring the boy." Aisha took Noah's hand, her heart racing as she led him through the silent stares of her co-workers. Ethan's corner office was spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline, and a gleaming walnut desk. He closed the door and motioned for them to sit in the leather chairs opposite his desk. Noah climbed up without hesitation, his legs swinging as he looked around in awe. "This place is enormous," he said in amazement. "Mom says you're an important person." Sitting behind the desk, Ethan paused, a faint smile crossing his face, an expression Aisha had never seen before. "Your mom said that?" he asked, looking at Aisha. She flushed, shaking her head. Noah, don't make things up. But Ethan waved it off. He's right. I'm pretty significant, at least in this building. His tone held a touch of humor, catching Aisha off guard. Ms. Thompson explained, Ethan said, his voice returning to its usual firmness. Why is your son here? Aisha took a deep breath and recounted what had happened. Mrs. Harris's sudden illness, her inability to find backup care, and her fear of letting him down on the Marshall report. I know company policy doesn't allow children here, she said earnestly, but I didn't want to disappoint you or let the team down. Ethan listened, tapping his fingers lightly on the desk, his eyes never leaving hers. When she finished, he glanced at Noah, now fiddling with a pencil that had fallen onto the chair. He seems well behaved, he said, almost to himself. There's a small meeting room no one's using today. He can stay there. You still need to finish that report before 10. Aisha blinked, unsure she'd heard correctly. Ethan Harper, the infamously inflexible CEO, was letting Noah stay? Thank you, Mr. Harper, she said, her voice shaking with relief. I'll make sure he doesn't disturb anyone. Ethan nodded, returning to his computer, signaling the conversation was over. But as Aisha led Noah out the door, he called after her. Ms. Thompson. She turned, finding him watching Noah with a curious expression. He has your eyes. Aisha offered a small, uncertain smile, unsure how to respond, and quickly ushered Noah out of the office. As the door shut behind them, the office outside erupted into whispers. Standing near Aisha's desk, Laura eyed her with curiosity and suspicion. I can't believe Mr. Harper let the kids stay, she murmured, just loud enough for Aisha to hear. You're lucky, Aisha. Anyone else would have been fired. Aisha said nothing, concentrating on settling Noah in the small meeting room. But Laura's words pierced like a blade, reminding her that every move she made at this company was being watched, and today's incident might have consequences she couldn't yet foresee. Noah sat at the table inside the meeting room, opening his coloring book again, but his eyes drifted to the glass wall, watching where Ethan had just passed. Mom, he's nice, right? He asked, voice innocent. Aisha knelt to adjust his backpack. He's Mommy's boss, honey. He has a lot of essential things to do. But inside, a quiet question flickered. Why had Ethan reacted that way? And why had his gaze on Noah held something deeper than tolerance? The door to Ethan Harper's corner office closed behind Aisha Thompson with a low thud, as if sealing her and Noah away from the curious stares. The space inside was expansive, with light pouring in through tall windows and casting soft reflections on the polished walnut desk and bookshelves filled with documents. Ethan sat behind the desk, authoritative in posture, yet the way he looked at Noah, seated in the leather chair opposite him, carried something gentler, almost curious. Aisha gripped Noah's hand tightly, feeling like she was stepping into a courtroom, even though Ethan's earlier gentle tone had left her disoriented. Noah, would you like to draw something? Ethan asked, sliding a blank sheet of paper and a pencil toward the boy. Noah nodded enthusiastically and immediately began drawing a dinosaur with a long tail. Aisha glanced at Ethan, trying to read his expression. She had braced herself for a reprimand, even a termination notice, but his unexpected tolerance had thrown her off balance. Ms. Thompson, Ethan said, his voice low but not harsh. Please, sit. We need to talk. Aisha sat down beside Noah, still holding his hand like a lifeline. Mr. Harper, I'm genuinely sorry about what just happened, she began, her voice trembling. Noah didn't mean anything by it. He's just a child, and I don't know why he called you that. My babysitter is sick, and I had no one else to leave him with. I promise this won't happen again. The words poured out in a rush, as if she didn't say them fast enough. Her chance to explain would vanish. Ethan raised a hand, signaling her to stop. "I'm not going to fire you, Ms. Thompson," he said, his gaze shifting from Noah to her. "I want to understand what's going on. This boy is your son. You brought him here because you had no other option." "I understand." Aisha blinked, not believing what she was hearing. Ethan Harper, the man everyone in the company called the machine for his cold efficiency and high demands, was showing understanding? She nodded, trying to steady her voice. "Yes, sir. His name is Noah. Thank you for not being angry." Ethan leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk, his eyes fixed on Noah, who was now drawing a second dinosaur. "He said I looked like the father in his dreams," Ethan murmured, as if thinking aloud. What does that mean to him? The question made Aisha stiffen. She didn't want to dig into Noah's dreams. Those stories he whispered at night, when she held him close, about a father he'd never met. "Noah. He's imaginative," she said quietly. "He wants to have a family like his friends." I don't think he meant anything by it. But Ethan didn't let it go. He stood up and walked to the window, gazing out at the Manhattan skyline, his back to Aisha. "When I was a child," he began, his voice low and distant, "I used to dream about a different kind of father, too. My father was always busy with meetings, travel, and building this company from the ground up. He was there, but never really present. My mother tried to make up for it, but even she had her battles with him." He paused, hands in his pockets, as if the memory were a wound that hadn't fully healed. "I don't blame him, but I know what it feels like to grow up without a father's presence." Aisha listened, her heart beating faster. It was the first time Ethan had shared anything personal with her, or, as far as she knew, with anyone at the company. She had always considered him a wall of steel, emotionless, all business. But this story, brief as it was, painted a different Ethan. A boy once lonely in a grand house, longing for a connection he never had. "I'm sorry," she said, unsure what else to offer. "But Noah, he doesn't have a father. That man left before he was born. I'm all he's got." Ethan turned back, his expression softening as he looked at Noah. "You've done well, Ms. Thompson," he said sincerely. "He looks happy. That's not easy to do, especially while working here." The unexpected praise made Aisha blush, but she quickly shook her head. "I'm just doing what I have to, sir." Ethan nodded and returned to his desk, though his eyes lingered on Noah's drawing, where two dinosaurs now stood beside a rough figure with short hair, perhaps meant to be Ethan. "Ethan said you can leave the boy in the small meeting room at the end of the hall," his voice slipping back into CEO mode. "I don't want him disrupting work, but I'll overlook it today. The Marshall media report still needs to be ready by 10 a.m., and I expect not to be disappointed." Aisha nodded, standing as she tightened her grip on Noah's hand. "Thank you, Mr. Harper. I'll get everything done on time." But just as she turned to leave, Ethan called out again, "Ms. Thompson, one more thing." She turned to see him looking at her directly, sharp but not cold. "Why have you never mentioned Noah before?" The question caught her off guard. She wanted to say he'd never asked, that in 3 years of working for him, he'd shown no interest in her personal life, only her performance. But instead, she replied, "I didn't think it was necessary, sir. My job is to support you, not bring personal matters into the office." Ethan nodded slowly, as if her answer confirmed something for him. "Understood," he said. "But in the future, tell me if you're facing a situation like today. I'm not unreasonable." Aisha offered a faint smile. unsure whether he was serious or simply trying to be polite. She led Noah out, feeling like she had just stepped out of a strange dream. As she got Noah settled in the small meeting room, Laura, her co-worker, appeared at the door, her eyes a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "You're bold, Aisha," she said, her voice low but laced with bitterness. "Bringing your kid here, letting him call Mr. Harper Daddy? What exactly do you think you're going to get out of this?" Aisha clenched her fists, forcing herself to stay calm. "I don't think anything, Laura. I'm just trying to do my job." But Laura's words cut deep, stirring fears that today's events might be misinterpreted, twisted into rumors in an environment where every move she made was scrutinized. Inside the meeting room, Noah looked up from his drawing. "Mommy, did I make him sad?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Aisha knelt and pulled him into a hug. "No, baby, you didn't do anything wrong." He was just surprised. But as she looked into Noah's eyes, she saw a flicker of hope, a child's innocent wish that Ethan, the kind and mysterious man, might somehow fill the emptiness he'd always felt. And that made Aisha's heart ache, because she knew the world wasn't as simple as a child's dream. The small meeting room at the end of the Harper Innovations hallway had become a temporary refuge for Noah, a quiet corner amid the bustling workplace. Aisha Thompson set up a spot for him at a long wooden table, laying out coloring books, pencils, and the box of cookies she had packed. Sunlight streamed through the large window, catching the curls in Noah's hair and making him look like a little angel in this unfamiliar world. "Sit here and color, okay?" Aisha said, her voice gentle but firm. "Mommy has to work, but I'll check on you often. Don't wander off, all right?" Noah nodded, his big eyes gleaming with obedience, though Aisha noticed a glint of curiosity hiding behind them. She returned to her desk, her heart racing after the conversation with Ethan Harper. Laura's words echoed. "What do you think you'll get out of this?" Aisha clenched her fists, trying to shake off the unease. She knew the whispers were already spreading through the office, the curious glances following her every move. At Harper Innovations, where every action was scrutinized, Noah's outburst, calling Ethan Dad, could easily be twisted into a story she couldn't control. She opened her laptop and focused on the Marshall media report, typing with desperate urgency. She needed to prove that Noah's presence hadn't affected her work. But every few minutes, she glanced toward the meeting room, where Noah sat quietly drawing, headphones over his small ears. Aisha smiled faintly, thinking of the nights she'd read to him, when he'd share his innocent dreams, stories about a family with both a mom and a dad, something she could never give him. Those dreams always pierced her heart, a painful reminder of what she couldn't provide. When lunch break arrived, Aisha brought a sandwich from the cafeteria to the meeting room. Noah looked up, his face lighting up at the sight of his mother. "Mommy, I finished my picture," he exclaimed, holding it up. It showed 3 people, a woman with curly hair, clearly Aisha, a smiling little boy, and a tall man in a suit, standing beside them and holding a toy dinosaur. Aisha's throat tightened. "Who's this, sweetheart?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Noah pointed at the man. "That's the dad in my dream," he said, his voice full of excitement. "He looks like Mr. Harper. He's nice, Mommy. He didn't get mad when I called him Dad." Aisha sat beside him, gently running her fingers through his curls. She wanted to say Ethan wasn't his father, that it was just a random moment. But Noah's bright eyes made her pause. "You dream about him?" she asked softly. Noah nodded, taking a bite of his sandwich. "I dream we live in a big house, with a yard and a dog. Mr. Harper reads me stories every night, and you laugh more." He paused, looking at her seriously. "Mommy, Why don't I have a dad like Tyler does? I want a dad like Mr. Harper." His words were like a blade to Aisha's heart. She pulled him into her arms, trying to hide the tears that welled up. "I don't know, sweetheart," she whispered, "but I promise I'll always be here for you." She remembered those early months after Noah's father left, cradling her newborn in their small apartment, wondering if she had the strength to be both mother and father. She had done her best, but Noah's questions about his dad always made her feel helpless. She didn't want him to grow up feeling incomplete, but how could she fill that void? And now, the image of Ethan Harper, the powerful, distant man, had entered Noah's dreams, complicating everything even more. A knock at the meeting room door startled Aisha. Laura stood in the doorway, holding a coffee cup, her eyes probing. "Aisha, Mr. Harper's asking about the report. He wants to see you now," she said coolly. Aisha nodded, keeping her expression composed. "Thanks, Laura. I'll be right there." But Laura didn't leave immediately. She looked at Noah, then back at Aisha, a thin smile on her lips. "You know the company's policy about children, right? Mr. Harper might be lenient today, but don't let this become a habit. It wouldn't look good, especially with your situation." Her words were a slap, laced with implication, the kind Aisha knew too well. They hinted that she had to be more careful than others, that she wasn't allowed to make mistakes. Aisha pressed her lips together and stood. "I understand, Laura. Thanks for the reminder." She turned to Noah and adjusted his backpack. "Keep coloring, okay? Mommy will be back soon." Noah nodded, but his eyes lingered on the drawing, as if he were still living in his dream. As Aisha stepped into the hallway, it felt like walking a tightrope. She knew Laura wasn't just talking about company policy. The whispers in the office had already spread, and this morning's incident, Noah calling Ethan dad, had only worsened it. As she passed desks, she could feel the stolen glances and hear the muffled murmurs that stopped when she approached. In a place like this, where she had to constantly prove her worth, even the slightest misstep could undo everything she'd worked for. Standing before Ethan's office door, Aisha took a deep breath, bracing herself for the meeting. She knocked, and his low voice replied, "Come in." She entered, report in hand, but Noah's drawing still haunted her mind. An image of the family he longed for, with Ethan Harper at the center. She didn't know what it meant yet, but she could feel a storm gathering, and she wasn't sure she was ready to face it. The door to Ethan Harper's office closed behind Aisha Thompson, leaving her in the sunlit hallway of Harper Innovations. The Marshall Media report, finally completed, was in her hand, but her mind was still tangled with Noah's drawing and Laura's warning. She glanced toward the small meeting room, where Noah sat coloring, his little legs swinging beneath the table. His innocent smile warmed her heart, but also made her anxious. Noah's dream of a complete family, with Ethan at the center, was something she didn't dare imagine, yet his eyes made it impossible to ignore. Aisha returned to her desk, trying to focus on emails and the meeting schedule, but the office atmosphere felt heavier than usual. The furtive glances from co-workers and the murmurs that followed her past the printer made her think she was under surveillance. She knew this morning's incident, Noah calling Ethan dad, had become the subject of gossip. And in a place like this, stories could be twisted into anything. She took a deep breath, reminding herself to stay grounded. She couldn't let whispers shake the confidence she had spent 3 years building. By lunchtime, the office buzzed with chatter from the large conference room, where the weekly staff lunch was underway. Usually, Aisha avoided it, eating quickly at her desk to catch up on work. But today, as she prepared to grab a sandwich for Noah, a deep voice called behind her. Ethan said Ms. Thompson stood at his office door, holding a folder. "Bring the boy to the main conference room. There's plenty of food today, and he should enjoy it." Aisha blinked in surprise. Mr. Harper, I'm not sure that would be appropriate, she said hesitantly. Ethan waved a hand, his eyes still sharp but with a rare warmth. It's not an order, Miss Thompson. Just an invitation. He can sit with us. There won't be a problem. Aisha nodded, unsure how to respond. Ethan Harper, the man the entire company respected and feared, was inviting her son to a staff lunch. She led Noah to the large conference room, gripping his hand tightly. The room was decorated with long white-clothed tables filled with food, sandwiches, salads, and a sparkling tray of desserts. Employees had already taken their seats, but the room fell quiet as Aisha and Noah entered. Noah, completely unbothered, looked around with bright eyes. "Mom, there's chocolate cake!" he shouted, making a few people chuckle. Aisha blushed and pulled him to a seat at the far end of the table, as far from Ethan as possible. But Ethan, seated at the head of the table, stood unexpectedly. "Everyone," he said, his voice echoing through the room. "Today we have a special guest. This is Noah, Miss Thompson's son. He's here due to an unexpected situation, and I hope we'll make him feel welcome." The employees exchanged surprised looks. A few nodded, though Aisha sensed the curiosity behind their polite smiles. Standing a few chairs away, Laura whispered something to the person beside her, her glance toward Aisha like a needle prick. Ethan sat down again, but instead of focusing on his lunch, he turned to Noah. "So, Noah, you like dinosaurs, huh?" he asked gently. Noah nodded eagerly, chewing on a sandwich. "I love T-Rex the most, but velociraptors are super cool too." Ethan smiled, a genuine smile, not the formal one Aisha usually saw. "Velociraptors? They're fast, right? Have you ever seen their models at the museum?" Noah shook his head, eyes lighting up. "No, but I want to. Mommy says one day we'll go to the museum." Aisha watched Ethan, surprised by his patience. She had never seen him interact with anyone like this, especially not a child. Other employees noticed too. A few paused their meals to observe. Ethan kept chatting with Noah, asking about his interests, from dinosaurs to robots, and even his favorite cartoons. Full of childlike enthusiasm, Noah recounted a story about a robot in a movie he wanted to build someday. Ethan listened attentively, occasionally nodding, as if nothing mattered more than the boy's words. When lunch ended, Ethan stood and signaled everyone to return to work, but he paused beside Aisha, lowering his voice. "Ms. Thompson, you can leave the office early today. Take Noah out for ice cream or something he enjoys. The afternoon report can wait until tomorrow." Aisha froze, clutching her chair. "Mr. Harper, She said I can finish everything before I go, trying to keep her tone professional. But Ethan shook his head. "It's a special day. Spend time with your boy. That's an order." Aisha nodded, unsure whether to feel grateful or worried. As she led Noah out of the conference room, she felt Ethan's gaze following them through the glass walls. Laura, standing near the door, looked at her with icy eyes. "You sure know how to get Mr. Harper's attention," Aisha said, voice low but clear. "Be careful. Things that come easily usually don't last." Aisha didn't reply. She gripped Noah's hand tighter, ignoring the rising unease. On the way to the elevator, Noah tugged her hand, eyes glowing. "Mommy, Mr. Harper is so lovely. He knows about dinosaurs and said I could go to the museum." Aisha gave a faint smile, patting his head. "He was just being kind, sweetheart. Don't think too much about it." But inside, a question had begun to form. Why was Ethan Harper, the man she had always seen as a wall of steel, acting this way? And why did the way he looked at Noah stir something in her that felt unfamiliar and dangerous. The New York afternoon cast a pale golden light through the window of Aisha Thompson's small Brooklyn apartment. She sat on the worn-out sofa, her gaze drifting toward the tiny cracks on the wall, her mind still spinning from the day's events. Her son Noah lay sprawled across the floor, coloring a new dinosaur drawing while humming a children's song. "Mom, do you think Mr. Harper will come over for ice cream?" he asked, his voice full of hope, his eyes lighting up at the mention of Ethan Harper. Aisha forced a smile, her heart aching. "No, sweetheart," she replied, trying to keep her tone gentle. "Mr. Harper is Mommy's boss, not a friend we invite over." But Noah's words brought her back to that moment in the Harper Innovations conference room. Ethan's rare smile as he talked to Noah about dinosaurs and robots. His unexpected kindness, inviting them to lunch, letting her leave work early, was something she still couldn't comprehend. Ethan Harper, the man the entire company viewed as a wall of steel, had acted like the father in Noah's dreams. And that terrified her. She got up and walked into the kitchen to make a cup of tea. But her thoughts kept circling back to the whispers in the office. Laura's voice echoed in her head. "Be careful. Things that come easily don't last." Aisha knew Laura hadn't just been talking about company rules. Every move she made could be misinterpreted in a workplace like Harper Innovations, where she had to prove her worth twice as much as everyone else. The incident where Noah called Ethan Dad had put her at the center of curiosity and speculation. Stories about her using the boss's attention were already beginning to circulate. She gripped her teacup tightly, a wave of anxiety rising inside her. She remembered her early days at the company, when a colleague once implied she'd only been hired because of diversity policies, not her abilities. She had worked relentlessly, executing every task precisely to prove she deserved her place. But now, Ethan's sudden interest unsettled her. If people began to think she was receiving special treatment because of a personal connection, everything she had built could collapse. And worse than that, she feared Noah, her sensitive son who dreamed of a complete family, would grow attached to Ethan, only to be heartbroken if it all unraveled. She returned to the living room and sat beside Noah. His drawing now featured a small house with 3 people standing in front: a woman, a child, and a man holding a toy dinosaur. "This is us, right, Mom?" Noah asked, pointing at the picture. Aisha nodded, her heart heavy. "Sweetheart, why do you think Mr. Harper is the dad from your dream?" she asked, her voice soft but worried. Noah stopped coloring and looked at her thoughtfully. "Because he's nice to me, Mom. He asked me about dinosaurs, and he didn't get mad when I called him Dad. I want a dad like that, so you don't have to work so much anymore." His words pierced Aisha like a knife. She hugged him, remembering the nights she worked late while Noah slept alone in their chilly apartment. She had tried to shield him from the hardship, but despite his age, he could still feel the weight on her shoulders. She thinks about Ethan and how he looks at Noah, as if searching for something in the boy. She couldn't deny his concerns seemed genuine, but it came with risk. Ethan lived in a completely different world, one of penthouses, tailored suits, and million-dollar decisions. How could she let Noah, or herself, step into that world without fearing the consequences? She had once believed in love, only to be left behind with a shattered heart and a child to raise. She couldn't afford to retake that kind of risk. The chime of her phone interrupted her thoughts. She opened the message, hoping it was from Mrs. Harris, but it was an email from Ethan from his address. "Ms. Thompson, I hope Noah enjoyed this afternoon. If you ever need help with childcare, please let me know. Harper Innovations has a support fund for employees, and I want to ensure you have what you need." Aisha blinked, rereading the email, unsure she believed what she was seeing. Ethan Harper, The man who hadn't once asked about her personal life in 3 years was now offering to help. She wanted to reply, to thank him for his kindness, but something inside warned her this could be a trap. If she accepted his help, what would people think? Would Laura and others whisper that she was taking advantage of him? She put the phone down without replying, but the email felt like a stone thrown into the still waters of her mind, rippling outward with waves of doubt. "Mom, I'm sleepy," Noah said, yawning as his drawing slipped to the floor. Aisha smiled, picked him up, and carried him to his room. As she tucked him in, he held her hand tightly and whispered, "Mom, Mr. Harper can be our friend, right? Like in my dream?" Aisha kissed his forehead, her heart aching. "Sometimes dreams are just dreams, baby," she whispered, though her voice trembled. "But I promise, I'll always protect you." As Noah drifted to sleep, Aisha returned to the living room and sat alone in the dark. She stared at Noah's drawing, the image of them standing outside a dream house. Part of her wanted to believe Ethan could be the man Noah saw in his dreams. But another part, the one that had been hurt before, warned her to keep her distance. She couldn't let Noah, or herself, fall into another dream, only to wake up with a broken heart. Friday morning light filtered through the curtains of Aisha Thompson's small Brooklyn apartment, casting a soft golden hue on the worn wooden floor. Aisha sat at the kitchen table, sipping from a cup of cold coffee, eyes fixed on her phone. Ethan Harper's email from the night before was still on the screen. "Ms. Thompson, I hope Noah enjoyed the afternoon. If you ever need help with childcare, please let me know." She had read it dozens of times and still hadn't replied. Ethan's unexpected concern, the same boss she'd always seen as cold and distant, left her confused, as though she was walking a road without a map. Noah ran into the kitchen, hugging his green plastic dinosaur, eyes gleaming. "Mom, do I get to see Mr. Harper today?" he asked excitedly. Aisha smiled faintly, her heart heavy. Noah's dream of a complete family, with Ethan at the center, filled her with worry. "No, sweetheart," she said, gently ruffling his hair. "You'll be with Mrs. Harris today. Mommy has to work." Noah nodded, but his gaze drifted away, imagining another day at the office, where Ethan chatted with him about dinosaurs. On the subway to Manhattan, Aisha held Noah's hand, feeling the warmth of his tiny fingers. She thought about the whispers in the office yesterday, especially Laura's icy remark, "Be careful. Things that come easily don't last." She knew that wasn't just a warning about company policy. It was a pointed reminder that any hint of favoritism from Ethan would raise suspicion. In a place like Harper Innovations, where she constantly had to prove herself, Noah's presence and Ethan's interest were risks she wasn't sure she could manage. At the office, Aisha focused on work, preparing documents for the afternoon meeting and professionally replying to Ethan's email. "Thank you, Mr. Harper. I'll arrange for childcare so it doesn't interfere with work." But while she was printing documents, Ethan appeared at her desk, tall in a gray suit. "Ms. Thompson," he said, his voice low but friendly. "I have a suggestion. This weekend, the Children's Museum downtown is opening a new exhibit, Dinosaurs and Robots. I think Noah would enjoy it. Would you and your son like to come with me?" Aisha froze, fingers paused over the keyboard. "Mr. Harper, I'm not sure that would be appropriate," she said hesitantly. Ethan smiled slightly, a rare expression that surprised her. "This isn't company business, Ms. Thompson. Just a weekend outing. I've already bought tickets, and I think he'd enjoy it." Aisha looked into his eyes, searching for hidden motives, but all she saw was sincerity. "I'll think about it," she said softly. Ethan nodded and returned to his office, leaving her with many unanswered questions. She returned to work, but her mind was scattered. part of her wanted to say no. Any relationship with Ethan, even a casual outing, could fuel office rumors. She'd grown used to the judgmental looks, the whispers about staying in her place. But another part of her, the part she tried to suppress, wanted to say yes. Noah would love the museum, and she couldn't deny that Ethan's kindness made her curious about who he was. That night, after Noah had fallen asleep, Aisha sat on the sofa, staring at the drawing he'd made the day before. 3 figures in front of a dream house. She texted Ethan, "We'll go to the museum. Thank you for the invitation." His reply came instantly. "Wonderful. I'll pick you both up at 10 a.m. Saturday. G." The letter G made her smile unexpectedly. Ethan Harper, the strict CEO, signing off like a friend. Aisha helped Noah into a dinosaur print t-shirt on Saturday morning, her chest tight with nerves. When Ethan knocked at their door, he looked entirely different in jeans and a blue button-down. Gone was the imposing CEO. "Hey, Noah," he greeted, kneeling to meet the boy's eyes. Noah squealed and hugged him. "Mr. Harper, are we going to see real dinosaurs?" Ethan laughed, a warm sound that surprised Aisha. "Not real ones, but pretty close. You're going to love it." At the Children's Museum, Noah darted from one exhibit to the next, eyes wide as he took in the massive T-Rex model and remote-controlled robots. Ethan walked beside him, patiently explaining how dinosaurs moved or how the robots worked, sometimes helping him reach 2 high buttons. Aisha followed behind, watching them, her heart both warm and uneasy. There was a moment when Noah grabbed her and Ethan's hands, grinning brightly. For a fleeting second, they looked like a normal family. The image startled her. She quickly pulled her hand away, pretending to check her phone. While Noah ran to another exhibit, Ethan sat beside her in the rest area. "He's a remarkable kid," he said, his gaze following Noah. "You've done an excellent job raising him." Aisha smiled, but her voice was guarded. "Thank you, but I've just done what I had to do." Ethan looked at her, his expression serious. "When Noah called me Dad, it made me think about things I've ignored. My life's been all about work, but with him, I felt something real." His words left Aisha stunned. She wanted to ask more, but Noah's excited voice cut in. "Mom, Mr. Harper!" "Mr. See this robot!" They stood, but as Aisha turned, she saw Laura near the museum entrance, her eyes sharp, fixed on them. "Ms. Thompson," Laura called, her voice sweet but laced with meaning. "What a coincidence. Fancy seeing you here. And with Mr. Harper, too." Aisha felt the blood drain from her face. She knew, in that instant, this moment would become yet another story in the office come Monday. Monday morning at Harper Innovations felt thicker than usual as Aisha Thompson stepped out of the elevator. The office gleamed under the light from its tall glass windows, but she could sense an invisible tension in the air, as if every gaze turned toward her. The weekend trip to the museum with Ethan Harper and Noah still lingered in her thoughts, especially when Laura, her co-worker, appeared with that cold smile and pointed words. Aisha clutched her bag tightly, forcing a calm exterior as she walked to her desk, though anxiety swirled inside. She powered on her computer and began checking emails, but her concentration was shattered. Whispers from nearby desks pierced her ears like needles. "Did you hear she went to the museum with Mr. Harper?" One voice said in a hushed tone, just quiet enough to pretend it wasn't meant for her to hear. "They're more than just co-workers now." Aisha clenched her fists, trying to ignore them, but every word felt like a blade, dragging up the countless times she'd faced judgment in this workplace. She had always been careful, working twice as hard to prove she belonged. Yet now, one harmless outing with Noah and Ethan had placed her squarely in the center of unwanted attention. She glanced toward the small conference room, where she'd kept Noah the other day, remembering his drawing, the one with the three standing before a dream house. In Noah's innocence, he had placed Ethan at the center of a family fantasy. But Aisha knew reality wasn't that simple. Ethan was her boss, a man from another world, one of penthouses and multi-million-dollar decisions. How could she let Noah, or herself, hope for something so uncertain? The thought of Noah growing attached to Ethan, only to be hurt, was something she couldn't bear. By midday, Laura approached Aisha's desk, holding a coffee cup, her smile thin and laced with sharpness. "So, how was the museum trip, Aisha?" she asked sweetly, but with clear intent. "I didn't expect you and Mr. Harper to be that close." Aisha took a deep breath and kept her voice calm. "It was just an outing for Noah," she replied, eyes fixed on her screen. "Nothing more." Laura raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. "Sure. But you know what people are saying? A weekend outing? Just the assistant and the boss? It doesn't take much time to guess what they think." The comment hit like a punch, but Aisha suppressed her anger. She wanted to defend herself, saying she had never taken advantage of Ethan and only wanted to do her job and raise her son. But she knew any explanation could be twisted. In this office, where she walked a tightrope daily, one misstep could bring everything she'd built crashing down. "Thanks for the concern, Laura," she said coolly. "But I've got work to do." Laura gave a faint smile and walked away, leaving Aisha with a growing sense of helplessness. During her lunch break, Aisha found her way to the small staff kitchen, where she spotted Maya, one of the few colleagues she felt safe around. Maya, her hair tied up and her smile always kind, was eating a salad in the corner. "Aisha, you okay?" Maya asked, noticing the tension in her face. Aisha sighed and sat down across from her. "Not really. People are talking about me and Mr. Harper just because I took Noah to the museum with him." Maya frowned and set down her fork. "I've heard. Laura's spreading it all over, but you know how it is. They'll always find something to say. When I got promoted last year, people whispered I was favored. Don't let it get to you." Maya's words were comforting, but they couldn't erase the worry. Aisha thought about all the time she'd felt isolated at work, the moments she stayed silent through backhanded comments. She didn't want Noah growing up in a world where every action she took was doubted, but she didn't want to crush his hope for a family. "I don't want Noah to get hurt," Aisha said softly. "He's getting attached to Mr. Harper, and I don't know where that's going." Maya placed a hand gently over Aisha's. "You're a wonderful mom. If Mr. Harper truly cares about Noah, that's not bad. But you have to protect your heart too, Aisha." Maya's advice stayed with her. Aisha had locked her heart tight since Noah's father left. She hadn't let anyone in. But Ethan's kindness, from the staff lunch to the museum trip, was beginning to shake the walls she'd built. As Aisha prepared to leave, Ethan appeared at her desk at the end of the day, holding a file. "Ms. Thompson, the Marshall Media report was excellent," he said, his tone professional, but his eyes warm. "How's Noah? Did he enjoy the museum?" Aisha nodded, caught off guard by the question. "He had a great time. Thank you for inviting us." Ethan smiled slightly, then lowered his voice, his eyes serious. "Ms. Thompson, I've heard some talk around the office. If anyone gives you trouble, let me know." Aisha froze. She hadn't expected Ethan to acknowledge the rumors. She wanted to say she could handle it and didn't need his protection, but Laura's words echoed. "Be careful. Things that come easily don't last." "Thank you, but I'm okay," she replied firmly. Ethan nodded, though his eyes lingered on her as she packed up and left. On the subway home, Aisha held Noah in her arms as he eagerly recounted the museum visit. "Mom," Mr. Harper said, "I could build a robot when I grow up." he exclaimed, making her smile despite the weight in her chest. That night, after Noah fell asleep, Aisha sat on the sofa, staring at his drawing. With all his complexity, Ethan Harper was becoming a part of their lives. But with every step closer, the pressure from the office and her fear of heartbreak grew stronger. She didn't know if she could truly trust Ethan, or if she was leading herself and Noah down a risky path. The soft Friday evening light filtered through the small apartment in Brooklyn as Aisha Thompson gently coaxed Noah into bed early, knowing the weekend ahead would be busy. The quiet was interrupted by the ring of her phone. She frowned, seeing a message from Ethan Harper. "Ms. Thompson, I'd like to invite you and Noah to dinner at my place tomorrow night. I'll be cooking Italian. Will 7 p.m. work?" Gee. Aisha blinked, rereading the message as her heart beat faster. Ethan, her typically cold and distant boss, invited them to his home. This was something far beyond last weekend's museum trip. She hesitated, fingers hovering over the screen. The whispers from the office, especially Laura's, echoed in her mind. An assistant and the boss spending the weekend together? Not hard to imagine what people are thinking. Aisha knew that accepting this invitation would only fan the rumors, but the way Noah's eyes lit up whenever he mentioned Ethan made it impossible to say no. "We'll be there." "Thank you," she replied, then set her phone down, feeling like she had just entered unfamiliar territory, dangerous, but undeniably tempting. On Saturday night, Aisha and Noah stood in front of a tall Manhattan high-rise where Ethan lived. His penthouse was at the top, accessed through a marble-floored lobby with a polite doorman. Aisha wore a simple but elegant blue dress, holding Noah's hand. He was wearing his favorite dinosaur t-shirt. "Mom, is Mr. Harper's house as big as a castle?" Noah asked, eyes sparkling. Aisha gave a soft smile. "Probably bigger than ours, sweetheart." When the elevator doors opened, Ethan stood at the entrance, dressed casually in a white shirt and jeans, no longer the commanding CEO. "Good evening, you two," he said warmly, surprising Aisha with the softness in his tone. "Noah, ready for some spaghetti?" Noah let out a joyful shout and ran to hug Ethan's leg. "With meatballs, Mr. Harper?" Ethan laughed, crouching to meet his eyes. "Of course. And there's chocolate ice cream, too." Aisha watched them, a strange blend of warmth and unease swirling inside her at how natural Ethan seemed with Noah. Ethan's penthouse was a world apart from her modest apartment. Gleaming hardwood floors, massive windows overlooking the glowing Manhattan skyline, and sleek, modern furniture made Aisha feel momentarily out of place. Yet Ethan had made the space inviting, with a small dining table set for 3, draped in a red tablecloth and candlelight. A high chair waited for Noah, something that touched Aisha more than she expected. "Your house is so cool," Noah exclaimed, rushing to the window to peer out at the city. Aisha gently pulled him back. "Noah, don't run around." Ethan raised a hand, smiling. "It's okay. I've taped the table corners and locked the windows. He's safe here." Aisha blinked, stunned by the thoughtfulness of such details. "Thank you," she said quietly, her chest tightening with gratitude and suspicion. Ethan served the spaghetti himself during dinner. He said it was his mother's recipe. Noah devoured the food eagerly, retelling the museum visit with animated excitement. Ethan listened attentively, asking questions that made the boy giggle. Aisha noticed Ethan wasn't just being polite. He seemed genuinely delighted to be around Noah. When Noah spilled some sauce on his shirt, Ethan calmly dabbed it off with a napkin, so gently and naturally that Aisha froze, startled by how effortlessly he made it look. After dinner, Ethan led them into the living room, where he had set up a cozy corner with children's books and a set of dinosaur toys. "I thought Noah might enjoy these," he said, as the boy rushed over, thrilled. Aisha sat on the sofa with a glass of orange juice, feeling like she had entered a dream. "You didn't have to do all this," she said softly. "I don't want Noah to get used to things I can't give him." Ethan sat across from her, his expression sincere. "I'm not trying to overstep, Ms. Thompson. But when Noah called me Dad, it made me realize something's missing from my life. I'm not great with words, but he makes me want to improve." Aisha was stunned. She wanted to ask more, to understand what had changed in him. But Noah's excited shout interrupted. "Mom! Mr. Harper has flying dinosaurs!" Aisha smiled, but looking back at Ethan, she saw him watching Noah with a tenderness she hadn't seen in anyone else. It moved her deeply, but also frightened her. She thought about the office rumors, Laura's warnings, and Noah's fragile heart. "Mr. Harper," she said, trembling slightly, "I appreciate your kindness, but I don't want Noah getting his hopes up. He's already lost one father. I can't let him lose another." Ethan nodded, eyes full of understanding. "I get it, Ms. Thompson. I don't want to hurt him. I wish to spend time with you both." Before Aisha could respond, her phone buzzed. A message from Laura. "Heard you had dinner at Mr. Harper's?" "Careful, Aisha. The office is buzzing." The color drained from Aisha's face as she set the phone down, hands trembling. Ethan noticed the change and frowned. "Is everything okay?" Aisha shook her head, offering a weak smile. But deep inside, she knew. Each step she took toward Ethan brought her closer to a territory far more dangerous than she was prepared for. Monday morning at Harper Innovations began with its usual rhythm. Clicking keyboards, ringing phones, and sunlight pouring in through vast glass panels. But for Aisha Thompson, the air in the office felt heavier than ever. Laura's Saturday night text. "Did you have dinner with Mr. Harper? Watch out, Aisha. The office is buzzing," still echoed in her mind, a warning of the storm ahead. She sat at her desk, trying to focus on emails and meetings, but her gaze drifted toward Ethan Harper's office, where he was preparing for a crucial meeting with Marshall Media. Aisha couldn't shake the unease left from Saturday night's dinner in Ethan's penthouse. His care, from cooking spaghetti to laying out toys for Noah, had stirred something profound inside her, but it also heightened the risk. She'd already felt the weight of glances from colleagues, the whispered conversations near the printer, at Harper Innovations, where every move was scrutinized. Being close to the CEO was a double-edged sword, threatening her career and privacy. Mid-morning, a delivery worker approached her desk, handing her a brown envelope with no return address. Thinking it was work-related, she opened it, only to find a photograph inside. A candid snapshot from the previous week in the park. Ethan helping Noah build a sandcastle, while Aisha stood nearby, smiling. On the back, a messy scrawl. "Happy family. Shame if it broke. Meet me at Blue Haven Cafe. 1 p.m. VL." All the blood drained from her face. Her fingers trembled as she gripped the photo, eyes darting around the office, as if the sender were watching from some hidden corner. Victor Langston. The initials clicked immediately. CEO of Langston Enterprises. The name Ethan had mentioned in tense strategy meetings. A ruthless competitor known for hostile takeovers and dirty tactics. But why target her? Why involve Noah? She shoved the photo into her purse and forced herself to breathe. Her mind raced back to Noah's radiant smile in the park, to the easy joy of that afternoon. She couldn't let anyone threaten her child. This wasn't just corporate maneuvering. It was personal. She stood abruptly and walked straight to Ethan's office, knocking sharply. "Come in!" his voice called, calm and steady. Aisha entered and closed the door behind her. She clutched her purse tightly. "Mr. Harper, I need to speak with you." Ethan looked up from his computer, frowning at the tension on her face. "What's wrong, Ms. Thompson?" Without a word, she pulled the photo from her bag and placed it on his desk, the handwritten threat visible. Ethan's eyes darkened as he read it. "Victor Langston," he growled, fury rising in his voice. "He did this? Do you know what he wants?" Aisha asked, trying to steady her voice, even as her heart pounded. Ethan stood, moving to the window, hands in his pockets. "Langston's been trying to buy Harper Innovations for a year. He's acquired 2 of our competitors already. I'm the last barrier. But this, threatening you and Noah, that crosses every line." He turned back to her, jaw clenched. "I'm calling my lawyers." Aisha reached out, placing a hand on his arm. "Wait. If he's willing to do this, we need to know what else he's capable of. I need to understand what we're up against." Ethan's gaze softened. "Langston wants Marshall Media, our biggest client. If he gets them, he could devastate us. But this photo, this isn't business. This is personal." A chill ran down Aisha's spine. She thought of Noah, his quiet hope for a family, his affection for Ethan, and how all of it could be shattered. "I don't want Noah dragged into this," she said firmly. "I'll meet him. I'll find out what he wants." Ethan shook his head, eyes hard. "No, I'll handle him. He's coming after me, not you." But before he could reach for the phone, it rang. He answered on speaker. A smooth, condescending voice filled the room. "Harper, I hear Ms. Thompson got my little gift. Beautiful shot." Ethan's fists clenched. "Langston, if you lay a finger on her or the boy, I swear." Victor cut him off. "Relax, Harper. This is to remind you what matters. Harper Innovations, or your sweet little family." He paused. "Meet me at Blue Haven, 1 o'clock. Come alone." The line went dead. Silence followed. Aisha stared at the photo on the desk, the image of joy and peace now poisoned by threat. "I'm going with you," she said, voice steady. Ethan shook his head, but his eyes said he knew he couldn't stop her. "Ms. Thompson, this is dangerous, but if you insist, we'll face him together." Aisha nodded. Her heart thudded with fear, but her mind was clear. What they were walking into wasn't just a meeting. It was a turning point for her, Noah, and Ethan. Blue Haven Cafe, tucked into a quiet Manhattan corner, buzzed with the warm scent of roasted coffee and the low murmur of morning patrons. Aisha Thompson sat across from Ethan Harper at a small table near the window, her hands wrapped tightly around a cappuccino, as if it were the only thing anchoring her to the moment. The candid photo of her, Ethan, and Noah at the park, with Victor Langston's threatening message, remained tucked away in her purse, but the image had carved itself into her mind, impossible to forget. Ethan, dressed in a simple gray suit that still carried his quiet authority, stared out the front door with eyes sharp as steel, like a man preparing for battle. Victor Langston entered with swagger, his polished black suit catching the light, a thin smirk dancing on his lips. "Harper, Ms. Thompson," he said smoothly as he sat down. "Thanks for taking the time." Ethan leaned forward, his voice low and cutting. "What do you want, Langston? Threatening families isn't business." Victor raised an eyebrow, unbothered. "Family? Interesting term, Harper. I'm reminding you of what's at stake should you refuse to cooperate." Aisha felt heat rise in her chest, but she held her tongue, her eyes darting between the two men. Victor slid a folder across the table. "Langston Enterprises' final offer. Purchase Harper Innovations at a 20% premium. If you refuse, Marshall Media will terminate its contract. I bought their controlling stake this morning." Ethan clenched his fists, though his voice remained steady. "You think a photo and a veiled threat will make me sell the company my father built?" Victor chuckled, his gaze flicking to Aisha. It's more than just a photo, Harper. I know everything about Ms. Thompson. Her small apartment in Brooklyn, the elderly babysitter, the boy Noah, who seems to adore you. It would be such a shame if their lives became complicated. Aisha's chest tightened, fear turning to fury. Don't you dare mention my son, she said, trembling but firm. Victor shrugged, as if her words were merely background noise. I'm only trying to make things easier for everyone. Ethan stood, his eyes burning. This meeting is over, Langston. You want a war? You'll get one. Victor rose casually, left the folder on the table, and walked out, his shadow long behind him. Once he was gone, Ethan sat back down, his hands shaking. Aisha reached across the table, her voice quiet but resolute. You can't let him win. But I don't want Noah caught in this. Ethan looked at her, his expression softening. I won't let anyone hurt you or Noah. That's a promise. Back at the office, Ethan closed the door to his corner suite and motioned for Aisha to sit across from him. He poured her a glass of water and slid it over, but didn't take one for himself. I need to be honest with you, Ms. Thompson, he began, his voice low and serious. Langston doesn't just want Marshall Media. He wants to destroy everything I've built. But what scares me most isn't the company. It's the danger he poses to you and Noah. Aisha blinked, surprised by the vulnerability in his words. Why do you care so much about us? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan looked out the window, his eyes distant. When I was a kid, my father put the company above everything. My mother, me. I swore I wouldn't be like him. But I followed the same path, living only for deals and deadlines, until the day Noah called me Dad. He turned to her, his gaze locking onto hers. You and Noah showed me what I was missing, a reason to live beyond spreadsheets and stock prices. Aisha felt her heartbeat quicken, but she shook her head. Mr. Harper, I can't let Noah become the reason you make your decision. He's too fragile. Ethan nodded, his eyes steady. I know. That's why I'm weighing two options. I could sell part of the company to keep Marshall Media, but that would mean layoffs. Maybe a lot. Or I could fight back. But that puts you and Noah in even more danger. A cold shiver ran down Aisha's spine. She thought of Noah's laugh at the park, his dream of having a real family. Don't sell the company for us, she said firmly. You built it from the ground up, like your father. But if you choose to fight, I'll stand with you. We'll find a way to protect Noah. Ethan looked at her, surprise and gratitude washing over his features. You said we, he whispered, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Aisha flushed, realizing the intimacy in her words. I just meant, I don't want you to face this alone. That night, Aisha returned to her apartment and held Noah as he slept. She stared at his drawing, 3 figures standing in front of a house under a bright sun. She thought of Victor's threat, Ethan's choice, and how their lives were being pulled into a power game far beyond her control. Just as she turned off the light, her phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. Ms. Thompson, thank you for being there today. I will find a way to protect you and Noah. Sleep well. G. Aisha read the message, her heart thudding. She knew one thing with certainty. She and Ethan were now standing at a crossroads, and there was no turning back. Tuesday morning at Harper Innovations was thick with tension, as if the entire building held its breath. Aisha Thompson entered the office, acutely aware of the furtive glances cast her way as she walked past. Rumors of her dinner at Ethan Harper's penthouse and the threat from Victor Langston had spread throughout the company, turning her into the center of an unwanted spotlight. She sat down at her desk, trying to focus on emails, but her mind remained haunted by the photo. Her, Ethan, and Noah in the park, and the scrawled message, "Happy family." It would be a shame if it all fell apart. She glanced toward Ethan's corner office, where he was on the phone, voice low and commanding. Since the meeting with Victor at Blue Haven, Ethan had worked through the night, summoning lawyers and calling an emergency board meeting. Aisha knew he was preparing for a fight, but she wasn't sure where that battle would lead them. She only knew she had to protect Noah, the little boy at home with Mrs. Harris, who was still drawing pictures of a family she wasn't sure she could give him. Mid-morning, Ethan's assistant appeared at her desk. "Ms. Thompson, Mr. Harper has requested your presence in the boardroom. Immediately." Her tone was professional, but her eyes betrayed curiosity. Aisha frowned, unaccustomed to being invited to high-level meetings. She grabbed her tablet, took a deep breath, and walked into the boardroom, where executives and lawyers sat around a long, polished table. Ethan stood at the head, composed in a dark blue suit, but his expression softened when he saw her. "Thank you for joining us, Ms. Thompson," Ethan said, motioning for her to sit near the door. The board members, ranging from older men in bespoke suits to younger, sharp-eyed directors, regarded her with quiet scrutiny. Aisha sat with calm resolve, her fingers tightening around her tablet. Ethan's voice rang out. "As many know, Victor Langston has acquired controlling shares of Marshall Media, our largest client. He has made an offer to buy Harper Innovations, backed by personal threats targeting Ms. Thompson and me." A murmur rippled through the room. Richard Bennett, a silver-haired board member, furrowed his brow. "Harper's offer is generous. From a financial standpoint, selling could yield significant returns for shareholders." Aisha's chest tightened, but Ethan raised his hand to silence the room. "I agree, Richard. But selling the entire company to Langston would mean surrendering the legacy my father built. I have another plan." He walked to the whiteboard and drew a rapid sketch. "I propose splitting Harper Innovations into two entities. Harper East Coast, which includes the Marshall Media contract, will be sold to Langston. The remaining business, Harper International, will relocate to Seattle, where we have a strong foundation and access to top tech talent. We'll use proceeds from the sale to reinvest and rebuild. Within 3 to 5 years, we'll surpass our current market position." The board members exchanged looks, some intrigued, others skeptical. Aisha listened, stunned by the audacity of the plan. Ethan wasn't just protecting the company. He was protecting her and Noah from Victor's reach. "And one more thing," Ethan continued, eyes meeting hers. "I propose restructuring the leadership team. I recommend promoting Ms. Thompson to Director of Communications. She's already been handling these responsibilities as my assistant. She's earned this." The room erupted into whispers. Aisha's face flushed. The Director of Communications was a senior position, far beyond her current role. The fact that Ethan made this proposal in front of the board left her both moved and nervous. "This is highly unusual," said Maria Lopez, another board member. "Ms. Thompson may be capable, but she has no executive experience. And given the recent rumors—" Her voice trailed off as her gaze shifted to Aisha. Ethan's voice cut through the tension. "Rumors have nothing to do with Ms. Thompson's competence. She's proven her value over 3 tireless years. And this new role removes any appearance of impropriety. She'll no longer report directly to me." Aisha looked at Ethan, her heart racing. He wasn't just shielding her from Victor, but also protecting her reputation. After an hour of heated discussion, the board voted. Ethan's plan passed by a wide margin. As the room emptied, Ethan approached her, his voice low. "What do you think, Ms. Thompson? Director of Communications?" Aisha gave a shaky smile, still dazed. I don't know what to say. But why didn't you tell me beforehand?" He shrugged, a rare glint of mischief in his eyes. I wanted you to be surprised, and I needed the board to see your genuine reaction. She shook her head, voice soft. You're risking everything, Mr. Harper. If Langston finds out about this plan before it's finalized, what will he do? Ethan's eyes darkened with resolve. He wants Marshall media, and he wants to hurt me. This gives him what he wants, but not all of it. More importantly, it protects you and Noah. Warmth spread through Aisha's chest, but her thoughts drifted to Noah, his newest drawing waiting at home. That evening, when Aisha returned to her apartment, Noah ran up to hug her. His latest drawing sat on the kitchen table. "Mommy, I drew Mr. Harper again," he exclaimed, pointing to a picture of the three of them standing beside a giant dinosaur. Aisha hugged him close, but her mind was still racing. Ethan's plan might save the company, but Victor Langston wouldn't go quietly. And this time, the fight wasn't just about business. It was about the people she loved most. Ethan Harper's penthouse glowed with the lights of Manhattan streaming through its towering glass windows. But inside, the atmosphere was warmer than ever. Aisha Thompson sat on the soft leather sofa, hands wrapped around a cup of hot tea, her eyes drifting toward Noah, playing with a set of dinosaur toys in the corner of the room. After the tense board meeting where Ethan unveiled his plan to split Harper Innovations and promoted her to Director of Communications, Aisha felt like she was standing at a fateful crossroads. Victor Langston's threat still haunted her, but Ethan's resolve gave her hope. They could overcome this, together. Ethan stepped out of the kitchen, dressed casually in a white shirt and jeans, looking far more relaxed than the CEO persona he wore in tailored suits. He placed a plate of cookies on the table and smiled at Noah. "Hey, buddy, want to be my little chef? I've got cookie dough in the kitchen." Noah squealed excitedly and ran after Ethan, leaving Aisha alone with her swirling thoughts. She thought about the past few weeks, from their museum trip to the dinner in this apartment, from the whispers in the office to Victor's intrusive photo. Every step closer to Ethan brought hope and fear, especially as Noah became increasingly attached to him. When Ethan and Noah returned, the boy's face was covered in flour, and they laughed at a silly dinosaur joke. Aisha smiled, but her heart felt heavy. She knew Ethan's plan, to sell part of the company and relocate to Seattle, would change their lives forever. She had agreed to go with him, but the thought of leaving New York, where she'd built a life for Noah, still worried her. Could she trust Ethan? Or was this just another dream destined to fall apart? After Noah was settled in the living room, watching cartoons, Ethan sat beside Aisha, his expression serious, yet tender. "Ms. Thompson," he began, his voice low and steady, "there's something I need to say." Aisha's heart raced. She had a feeling this moment would change everything. Ethan took a deep breath and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. He knelt before her and opened it, revealing a sparkling diamond ring. "Aisha, these past months have changed me. You and Noah have shown me what truly matters. Not the company, not money, but family. I want to build a future with both of you. Will you marry me?" Aisha blinked, tears welling in her eyes. She looked at the ring, then into Ethan's eyes. Sincere, and even a little vulnerable, she thought of Noah, his dream for a family, and feared that opening her heart might only bring pain again. "Ethan," she said, calling him by his first name for the first time, her voice trembling. "I'm scared, not one of you, but for Noah. He's grown so close to you. If this falls apart, he'll be crushed." Ethan took her hand, his gaze unwavering. "Aisha, I promise, I will never hurt Noah. Or you. This is a big step, but I want us to be a family in Seattle or anywhere else." Before Aisha could answer, Noah ran in from the living room, his eyes wide with curiosity. "Mom, what's Mr. Harper doing?" he asked, spotting the ring in Ethan's hand. Aisha laughed through her tears and wiped her cheeks. "He's asking Mommy a fundamental question, sweetheart." Noah tilted his head, then grinned. "You want to be my dad, right? Like in my dream." He threw himself into Ethan's arms, hugging him tightly, and both adults laughed through their tears. Aisha looked at Noah and Ethan, and a sense of rightness filled her heart. "Yes, Ethan," she said, her voice clear and steady. "I'll marry you. But for Noah's sake, we have to take things slowly." Ethan smiled, slipped the ring onto her finger, and pulled her and Noah into a tight embrace. But the joyful moment was shattered by the ringing of Ethan's phone. His expression darkened when he saw the caller ID, Victor Langston. He answered and put the call on speaker so Aisha could hear. "Harper," Victor's voice cooed, smooth but venomous. "I heard about your little company split. Very clever. But not clever enough. I've got another gift for you. Check your email." Ethan opened his email, and he and Aisha froze at what they saw. A new photo, taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. Aisha and Noah leaving her apartment that morning. Aisha's face drained of color, her hand clutching Noah. "He's watching us," she whispered, voice shaking. Ethan ended the call, fury in his eyes. "He won't stop," he said through clenched teeth. "But I will protect you, Noah, and Aisha. I swear it." Aisha nodded, her heart pounding, fear mingling with the tenderness still lingering from Ethan's proposal. She looked down at the ring on her hand, knowing their commitment was no longer just about love. It was about facing the battles ahead. 3 months later, the backyard of Aisha Thompson and Ethan Harper's new home in Seattle was bathed in sunlight. Hydrangeas bloomed in soft blues and purples, and the laughter of guests filled the air. Aisha stood in front of the bedroom mirror, her simple white wedding dress hugging her form, shimmering under the soft natural light. The diamond ring on her finger Ethan had given her during his proposal sparkled like a quiet reminder of the unexpected journey that had brought them here. She took a deep breath, a mix of nerves and peace swirling within her, as if every piece of her life had finally found its place. Noah burst into the room in a tiny suit, his curls neatly combed. "Mom, I've got the rings!" he shouted gleefully, holding up a small silk pillow with 2 bands tied securely on top. Aisha knelt and hugged him, her heart full. "You look so handsome, baby," she whispered, straightening his tie. Noah grinned proudly. "Mr. Harper said, I'm the most crucial ring bearer ever." Aisha laughed, thinking about how Ethan had become irreplaceable in their lives. From a distant boss to the man she was about to call her husband. Outside, the guests had gathered. Colleagues from Harper International, a few close friends from New York, and even Mrs. Harris, the longtime nanny who had agreed to move to Seattle to stay close. "At my age, a slight change is good for the soul," she had said, when Aisha offered to help her settle nearby. Ethan stood beneath an archway draped in hydrangeas, dressed in a tailored gray suit, his eyes lighting up as he saw Aisha walk out, holding Noah's hand. The guests clapped. But to Aisha, the world shrank to her, Ethan, and Noah. During their vows, Ethan took Aisha's hands, his voice clear and full of emotion. "Aisha, Noah, you've shown me that family isn't always about blood. It's about who we choose to love and protect. I promise to put you both first, no matter where life takes us." Aisha blinked back tears, but smiled, her fingers tightening around Ethan's and Noah's. Ethan, who would have thought that one random moment, when Noah called you Dad, would lead us here. I promise to help build a home where Noah will always feel loved. Standing proudly between them, Noah lifted the pillow high, causing the crowd to laugh. "I want us to be a family forever," he said, his clear voice ringing out. As Ethan and Aisha exchanged rings, Noah threw his arms around them both, and in that sunlit moment in Seattle, they became a family in every sense. Aisha kissed Ethan, and in that kiss, she felt the weight of every past hardship dissolve. Office whispers, Victor Langston's threats, all replaced by the clarity of belonging. Just before the celebration began, a delivery man appeared at the garden gate, handing Ethan a brown envelope. Aisha's heart skipped a beat, remembering Victor's surveillance photo. Ethan opened it, his expression tightening, but then he gave a soft smile and handed it to Aisha. Inside was a business article titled, "Langston Enterprises Fails in East Coast Expansion. Harper International Thrives in Seattle." There are no threats or photos, just a single line from Victor. "Congratulations on the wedding, Harper. You win this time." Aisha exhaled, her grip tightening around Ethan's hand. "He's letting it go," she whispered. Ethan shook his head, eyes full of resolve. "He's not giving up, but he no longer has a way to hurt us. Harper International is stronger than ever, and we have each other." Aisha nodded, that deep warmth spreading in her chest as she watched Noah chase a butterfly across the garden, his laughter echoing like a promise. That night, after the guests had gone, Aisha, Ethan, and Noah stood on the balcony of their new home, gazing out over the twinkling lights of Puget Sound. "Mom, can we get a dog?" Noah asked, his eyes wide with excitement. Ethan chuckled and tousled the boy's hair. "We'll find one only if you promise to walk it daily." Noah nodded eagerly and ran inside to grab his latest drawing, one showing 3 people and a dog standing in front of this house. Aisha leaned into Ethan's shoulder, soaking in his warmth. "Did you ever think we'd make it here?" she asked softly. Ethan kissed her forehead. "The moment Noah called me Dad, I knew everything would change. I didn't think it would be this wonderful." Aisha smiled, gazing out at the city that was now their home, knowing they had built something real. Not just a house, but a place in each other's hearts.